Hello and good afternoon. I'm double checking. I see all my volume indicators and so welcome. I'm glad you can make it. This is How-To Diorama, just like you saw there. And today we're going to talk about this Western terrain that I've been working on this week with in my coaching class. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to show you the top down because I've got this diorama set up and it's just a base. And basically what this is it is it's like my test mule, if you will. It's just meant to show how to do certain techniques and how to do certain elements of this diorama. And I'm helping my student, and then my student builds their own. So this one is not slated for anything. I don't have a model to put on or anything like that, but it's been a heck of a lot of fun to work on. And I think one of the things that I thought would be fun to talk about today is the fact that this isn't a diorama that I started. This isn't a project that I started with. Hey, I'm going to build this or build that. It's something where someone came to me and said, "I'd like to build this. Can you show me how?" And there's like a whole different viewpoint at that point going into it, because it's like, well, I haven't been thinking about it for months. I haven't been gathering all this data in my head. It's kind of this spontaneous, I'm going to build this. And I got to tell you, it's really, really fun. That's one of the things that I think is neat about kind of maybe branching out and going outside, because I've never done this. I've done lots of terrain and I love challenges and I love doing new stuff, and I've got a lot of experience. Okay, all that. And I think a lot of people do. But it's when you dive into something that you haven't been thinking about for a while, like a whole different process kicks in. And it's super fun. So I just thought it would be fun to talk about that a little bit today too. I want to say hello to folks. There's a bunch of folks on here, and I appreciate you coming in. Daniel's here from Homefront Forge. Hello, Bill and chat. So thanks very much for saying hi to other folks too. Hey, James is here. Evening from the UK. Thanks very much, James, for coming in. Um, and then we've got Stephen is here. Hello, Stephen. Thanks very much for coming in, everybody. This is so cool. Juan Rus Polo. Is it Polo or Pollo? I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure I don't get it wrong. But hello, my friend. You're effing artist. God bless your hands. Thank you so much. That's really, really nice. And this is one of those things I talk about quite a bit. It's not necessarily that I concentrate on one thing, but it's that depth of knowledge that you bring from everywhere that I think it makes your diorama a little bit more interesting. So maybe that's where it comes from, because I'm interested in so many things instead of just like one particular thing. So maybe that's part of kind of having something that's a little bit more interesting. I'm not sure. But Hepe is here. Hello, Bill, and everyone else. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And Scott is here. Hello, Scott. Howdy, Bill, and everyone. Thank you so much. Boy, huge crowd today. And thank you so much, folks, for coming in. This is really fun because I had a great week. Now, I have to say, it's been a very tiring week. And I have a little announcement. Nothing wacky, but I got to see where it's at here. Here we go. So we um, had a chance to do a little adoption this week. And I'm sorry, I am trying to find this picture for you. But so here's Ghost. Everybody has met Ghost. Hey, Bob is here. Hello, Bob. Thanks very much for coming in. But everybody has had hopefully a chance to meet Ghost. He is my shop cat. He's a mouser. He's the coolest guy on the planet, of course. But this week, we just had the opportunity to adopt these little guys. So this is Gus on top, and then this is Sam on the bottom. Sam is quite small. Now, Sam is really brave. He's Sam the Brave because he's out and he's looking and he's discovering things before Gus. But then Gus, he's a little bit bigger. They are litter mates, they're brothers. but Gus is just like the hammer. He comes in and he bowls through stuff, and he's really tough. But Sam is really inquisitive. So our family now feels a little bit more complete, because some folks that have been listening to the channel for some time may know that we're huge cat people. Um, my wife and I, Mrs. Modelcraft, we are just huge into animals in general, but cats. And we've always had like three minimum cats. And COVID was pretty rough. We lost one of our cats during COVID, Hemingway. We lost his brother not quite a year ago, just about a year ago, actually, Cooper. So we lost Cooper inside. So we had no cats inside the house. And then, of course, Oscar, we lost about a year and a half ago. And he was my shop cat. Um, and that was pretty rough on us. And if you have a cat, if you have pets, you know what that's like. So there's been kind of a little bit of a void. Well, it was finally time, and we were able to go ahead and get these little rascals, as well as Ghost. Because Ghost, he joined the family on his own. He was a stray, and he came out of the woods because we live up in the mountains. And so Ghost just like came in out of the woods, and he became my shop cat when Oscar passed away. And that's how Oscar came about, by the way. And then by getting these two little guys this week, the family feels complete again. And so we're really feeling blessed, and we think it's just wonderful. So I just wanted to share that. It has been some sleepless nights because these little guys are just bonkers, but it's wonderful, and so we're really blessed. And so I just thought I wanted to tell some folks about that. So now let's get down to some model building and some diorama building, and let's start out with a Godzilla update. So here we got some pictures of Godzilla, the Hand of Godzilla. And this is last week, after I had put another coating of the air dry clay on it. And if you look closely here, it's a nice smooth coating. There's a couple of little cracks, but not bad, because that's places that had cracked from before. But it was looking pretty good. Now, it has sat for an entire week, and this is what we got. This side of it looks pretty good. Not doing too bad. Down here, these cracks have opened up a little bit, and we want these cracks. Remember, what's happening here is I've placed some pretty thick air dry clay on here. The first coat was previously, it didn't even resemble the final shape that I was hoping for. But by letting that dry, letting it shrink, letting it crack, letting it get to that point, then going on with another thick coat, that's going to allow this to hold its shape better in the final kind of, I guess, sculpturing or carving that I do. Sorry, my throat's really dry today. And I have some messages here. Hepe says, congratulations on the tour. Adorable cats. Animals bring so much joy to everyday life. Yes, they do. And they're really important for Mrs. Modelcraft and I. Have to drop out, Bill. Sorry, catch up soon. No problem, James. We'll see you next time. And we need to talk soon, sir. We've got another date coming up to do a panel. Kittens look great. Thank you so much. So back to the hand. That cracking is expected, and you want that to happen, because what happens here is if you don't allow this to shrink and go through this process, what can happen is as you put other layers on top, it can cause them to delaminate. It can cause the layer above it, if there's another layer below this and it's still shrinking, and it shrinks at a different rate, excuse me, than your final layer, then that can delaminate. It can cause warping. It can cause all kinds of stuff. So it's so super important, if you're going to use this. This is great stuff, but you just need to know it does shrink. It will crack. But once it's done, and then you do a thin layer which is what I'm going to do, then it'll be just fine. But you have to let that happen. Putting it on all at once, I guess I could have, but it just extends that drying time so far. I mean, I could have done thinner layers than I did this time, which would have gotten me less cracking, but it would just take longer. So anyway, that is the update. I have not done anything else on um, the Hand of Godzilla because I've been working on the Western Road. Oh man, my throat's really dry. Sorry. All right, so now let's take a look. Excuse me. At my coaching and mentoring, I've got new videos that are going to be coming up this tomorrow on a new video that'll release about coaching. But this week we worked on this. So this is my Western Road, and it excuse me, I'm sorry. It's just getting me really bad. This Western Road is supposed to be a cut between two rock formations. And so started out last week showing you how to kind of get this together. I just gave you some quick tips about painting and stuff like that. Again, there's videos coming out on this later on. But this week we took this dark modeled surface, and by using just three colors, we're able to get these three colors right here: yellow ochre, deck tan, and light rust. We're able to get this kind of a finish out of it. And it's really simple, basically. I'm going to take the yellow ochre, do a dry brush over this. Then I take the deck tan and do kind of an outline to each rock. If you look at real closely to those rocks, there's just a little bit of an outline. And then I go in with that red with a little bit of blotches, some of the rust. And so that's giving me these nice rock formations. And I'm really happy about how those are coming out. But now we need to start looking at foliage and rounding this scene out a little bit. You know, it's important to get every little, you know, your main part of the diorama. And I'm going to go to the top down. You know, if you look at this thing from the front, you know, the main part of it is really this rock formation. That's kind of your anchor. So I worked on that first, but then we got to start bringing in the rest of the diorama so that those things aren't this just really incredibly stark feature. Everything has to come from that. And I'm trying to make the point that because these are such stark individual features, you want to slowly kind of blend them in. If you make them stand out too much, then it's going to look like they're just on top of it instead of as a part of it. So that's what the grasses and some of these rocks and stuff that we're going to look at next are doing. Hey, John is here. Holy cow, John, I haven't heard from you for a while. It's great to see you. Thanks very much. Not my original idea, but next time doing a diorama, a Pacific scene, we have a peak hole where people look through on the other side to have a rectangular diorama just on the other side. I love that, John. That is a really great idea. Remember, and John has been listening for a long, long time. So it was well over a year ago that we were talking something like that, John, where it was because I was interested in like a periscope, a World War I periscope, to have kind of like you look into the periscope, but when you look into the periscope, you're looking like over the trench into no man's land. But I think we were talking about like a year ago because I was working on the World War I trench like that. I love that idea. And obviously the Pacific Theater. So thanks very much, John. Back to this guy real quick. So when we're trying to blend this in, I'm going to show you how I basically start with like the rocks and just the lower stuff, and then I'll move to some bushes, and then I'll move to the this like overhang that I'm doing. So first thing, trees. We're going to look at those first. In the trees, these are just very simple trees made from this. Now, this is sea foam. If you haven't seen this before, I'm going to show it to you real quick. I've got some here. It's called sea foam. And I got it from Scenics. It's not Woodland Scenics, but it's Scenics Express. And I believe it's a type of like an ocean plant, you know, and they're readily available. They're not expensive. And when you get them, I got mine in a big old box. I don't know that I'll ever have to buy them again. Whoops. And they work really wonderfully. They look like scale trees right out of the box. So you don't have to do a lot. So I've got a picture here of a diorama that I did quite a bit ago. And what it was a demonstration to show how to build these. So now there's a close-up picture, but I'm just going to show you from back here too. So here is this diorama, and it just shows all the steps, you know, starting with your basic foam, and you carve it, and then you do your sanded grout, and then you start to add these things. Well, here's these 4 trees here. We're going to use those as our examples to see how to make trees, because it's just really, really easy. And then I'll show you some live example using the hairspray. But basically what it is I start with the tree from Scenic Express, and then I want to paint it a base color. Now, this base color is completely up to you based on the type of tree you want to do. Yes, this is more of a, a leafy tree. It's not an evergreen or anything like that. But, you can get a very reddish bark to it sometimes, which I think is really nice. You can get a very gray bark. So anyway, paint the whole thing so you get the branches and everything. You paint the whole thing this brown color. And then in the next point, you're just literally sprinkling some ground turf. And what I mean by turf is this. And this is from Woodland Scenics. Here's a package of foliage. So it's this kind of a packaging. I think you've seen it before. But what I like to do is I get the fine, fine turf that they have, and I like to use 2 different colors when I do this. I've got that fine turf, and then I've got this one. And basically what this stuff is, there's a lot lighter color, but I like to mix the 2 colors because when you look at a leaf, if you look at a leaf from the underside, it's typically a lighter color. From the top side, it's a darker color. So I do the same thing, when I'm making my trees. So what I'll do is I take it's just Aquanet. It's just regular hairspray. And it's also useful because you use chipping for hairspray in model building. But I'll take that and I'll spray the top of this, and then I'll just sprinkle over the top. Now, that sounds like, that's just really simple. Well, there's a little bit more to it. So what you want to do is you want to get leaves just on top. So when I'm spraying this, I'm not spraying like around the sides, over the top, kind of, like this. No, not at all. I'm literally taking this thing and I put some gloves on and I hold it in my hand like this. And then I spray straight down onto it. I'm typically holding it like this when I'm stirring it. And I'm spraying like this so that my adhesive, which is what this ends up being basically, is just on the top of the leaves. And I don't want to go bonkers. This stuff comes out. I mean, it's like your heavy paint. You've done that before, and you spray a little bit too much and it starts to drip. This stuff will do that. So you're just doing spritzes. Okay. And it's just like psst, psst, a little bit like that, maybe a little longer. And what that does is that's going to go ahead and get your adhesive, the hairspray, on top. You don't necessarily want anything sticking to the bottom. Now, there's a different technique that I use where you do want that, but we're just going for the basic, okay? So by spraying it straight down, I'm holding it like that, I'm spraying it here, then I take my fine turf and I just sprinkle over it. So now I'm going to do this. It's going to be hard to kind of see it. So I'm going to try to do it on camera here. But I've got my garbage can below and I'm getting it all over my hand, but that's okay. It wouldn't be a big deal. And actually, I'll do it on the side a little bit to show you. So I've just taken this, I'm shaking it up, and I just like that, just a couple of quick spritz, And then when I drop this on here, I'm just letting them fall. I'm not pressing them in. I'm not trying to do anything like that. And I don't know if you can tell as well as I'd like, but look at that. Just that little tiny bit, those little tiny spritzes are getting that to stick to the individual clumps there. Now, here's the key to making believable trees. Don't overdo it. Let's look at these pictures again. It's too easy to put too much on these trees. Look at the foliage here. There's not a heck of a lot on there. You should be able to see branches. You should be able to see through the trees. You know, when I first did a tree, when I first did this technique, I just piled it on there. I mean, it was like, I don't know what the heck it was like. I mean, I have it over there, but I'm not going to show you because it's horrible. I just put too much on. When you're doing your trees, think about sparseness. Just keep that in mind, because when you look at this, when you can see through the trees, when you can see through the branches, that looks like a single tree. When you get a bunch of trees together, that's when you start seeing this impenetrable canopy, whatever you want to call it. That's when you see that dense forest. But individual trees should not be too dense. It gives it a heck of a lot more character. It gives the tree a much more natural look. So just go sparse. That's that word. Keep that in mind. As you're building your trees, you'll get a feel for it very quickly. If you get too much of this on there, let's say you just spray too long and it's dripping, let it dry. Just stop, let it dry. This stuff can build up. It's not too tacky after it dries. It's hairspray. But let it dry and then give it another shot, and just spritzes. And it works out great. And it sticks to it. Do you have to do any sealer over your trees when you're done? No, but I do sometimes, because what I'll do is, after I'm done with this and I've got my trees, let's go back to our pictures. After I've got my tree in the last part of it, like in this stage right here, what I want to do is maybe add some different leaves, maybe some debris to look like dead leaves or something like that on the tree. But then I'll use some TS80, and that is the clear flat Tamiya TS80. And I will do that over the tree. I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a sealer, it kind of locks everything in. I don't know that to be fact, but I know that when I tried to do it with this and just left this as the final, like I did a final little spritz of this and let it dry, um, it seemed to pick up more dust. The TS80 helped. That's another thing. Let's go back to these. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but look at that tree on the left-hand side next to the Aquanet can. Can you see a little line going down? That is a spider web. So I have this little diorama. This is on top of a shelf in the shop. And so there's spiders and cobwebs and stuff around here, of course, up in the higher elevations that I can't get to all the time. Well, that's a cautionary tale, because if you do build trees, if you do build these beautiful little trees and you don't cover it, or if you don't have a way to protect it from that stuff, bugs will get into it. Spiders will get into it. They're just like, wow, this is perfect. It's a little tiny tree and I'm a little tiny spider. And so just keep that in mind. When I was doing just regular stuff before I started doing trees, you go up to your model and it's like, there's a little dust on it. You dust it off, you blow it off with your air hose or something like that, and it just works fine. Not with these trees. Man, you get that kind of stuff in there. You kind of get that kind of detail in there. You can't really dust them without breaking stuff. So these things are pretty delicate. So just kind of have that in mind. This one is just a diorama for training purposes, so I don't cover it. But most of my dioramas where I have trees, something like that, I do want to kind of cover them just to protect them. Okay, I got some great comments. I need to carving class base center. Sorry, I got to go back. Okay, Bob says, Bob says the carving class is the base in the center of the project. Incredible sculpturing, like the hand of Oh No Godzilla. Thanks very much, Bob. And then John says, I haven't heard of anyone try something called baby's breath. It's decoration for flower arrangements for tree bushes. Yeah, and baby's breath works great. It has the little flowers on the end, so you have to knock those off if you want to use it for a tree. But for like a flowering tree, it's amazing. Yeah, so baby's breath can work too. Now they sell colored ones. Yeah, you can get colored baby's breath, all kinds of stuff, and that's dried and it's very brittle, the colored ones. But yeah, you can absolutely those. Bob says the rocks are carved in a way that screams fracture in the sandstone granite illusion forces of hardness is coming from foam. Isn't that fun to be able to get something that looks so much like rock, but it's just foam? Yeah, I love that part of it. And then John says, curious if you ever built diorama where the scenery was put together with magnets so most of the scenery can be interchangeable. No, I haven't, but I've thought about that, John, because I think so. I have a nephew that's really getting into, I mean, like has won state awards for movies. Just made a movie, and I'll have to get a link to it because it was a really, really good movie and it won a state award. It was a short little movie. And I know that at one point he was looking at doing like a stop motion. And I thought it would be cool because has anybody ever seen? There's a drawing, and there's some controversy if it was Da Vinci that drew it or if it's somebody that just drew it like Da Vinci. But it's a stage, and it has these really cool doors that kind of close and open, and it's an automata where it you crank it up and it does all these things, and the stage opens and closes, and different scenes come in and then go down, and stuff like that. It's just really, really cool little mechanization that again some have attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, and some people say it's not him. But the point is it's just like you're saying, John. It's where you have this little stage, little diorama, but it's meant for like a puppet show or a small miniature like Greek tragedy. Those old stories, and I just love the idea of that. Number one, anything Da Vinci just blows my mind, but the mechanics of making it open and close, and then there's a scene there new each time, whether you do it with magnets or not. I think that would be cool. But yeah, that's where I've seen that kind of, or I've thought about that kind of idea. And I love that. I haven't really used magnets in a diorama specifically, not for a detail. I've used it to hold like backing doors and, in the main construction, that kind of stuff. But with all the stuff that I do, it seems like a magnet would be just natural, to have something boom, and then it's just always right there and indexed. So yeah, great idea, John. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to get back to our slides here. And so if there's any questions about these trees, they're so easy to make. They're a little bit I guess ubiquitous, and that's where you want to make sure when you are making them, you make them the best you can, because these are readily available and everybody can make the same tree. You don't want your tree to look just like everybody else's. So take your time, shape it. When I'm shaping these guys, I'm plucking different parts of it off. I'm painting the truck a different color. I'm really trying to get in there. I'm thinking about putting little birds' nests in them and stuff like that. Make sure that yours is different, because if not, it's just going to look like background and then you might as well just use like a fish tank tree, how those things are, which I've seen, which is not a great choice. Okay, so after that, I want to show you. There's that little diorama deal. There's our Aquanet. The rocks, and so this is what Bob was talking about too. These rocks. Now I'm using. They're right over here. Well, they were right over here until I need them. These are plaster rocks. Now, I can use any kind of rock I want, but I decided to use plaster rocks in this just for lightness. And I had some. I took the time. I've got those little plaster molds you can get from Woodland Scenics, and took the time, oh gosh, a year ago, and made a bunch of them. So that's really nice to just kind of go to your store and grab some of those. Now, when I'm putting these in here, excuse me, I wanted to show you something here. The placement of these is pretty specific, because I'm not thinking about just the rock being there. I'm thinking about the rock is there to support something else. Because when you're like in the desert, or arid area, whatever, high winds, whatever the case may be, your trees are going to typically, like I've done in here, and I took the trees out, but in every case here, the trees are really in the notches of and the gaps of these rocks. And the reason being, when you've got a lot of wind, the rock is actually going to stop the seed from just, keep going on the wind. So it traps a little area there. It traps other stuff. It maybe traps water because of shade, whatever the case may be. That's where your tree is going to come from. So when I'm placing these rocks in here, I'm thinking about not exactly where the tree's going to go yet, because I don't have the trees even made, but I'm thinking I want a tree or a bush or a shrub or some kind of a grass near this rock. So I'm not just placing a rock there. There is an intent after the rock is there. So after I've got my rocks in, all I did was I sprinkled a little bit of Mod Podge over it. I wet it down, let it set up, and painted it. And I'm going to show you that process in a little video here that I need to switch to. And what it is how I did dirt clods. And I'll take questions here real quick, but it's how I did dirt clods. But I want you to see this because it's really the same process that I used in doing these rocks. And I think it's important to see. So real quickly, I want to get a couple of questions. So Bob says the hairspray I use for chipping my for chipping into my paint leaves. Yes, levels on plastic models. You're exactly right. And I've done that process before, and it leaves a great result. If you haven't done hairspray chipping on, to get paint chips and stuff like that, showing levels of your tank or your vehicle or any painted surface, give it a shot. It's great. I'm sure I'll probably try it here too. The concept is a little glue is a great idea. Yeah, a light glue is a great idea, because you put too much on there, and it's really gonna make these globs of stuff on there. So yeah, just a little bit. All right, now let's go back. I want to show you this little video, and it is that's not what I wanted. Sorry. It is a little video showing how I did dirt clods on the side of the road. So what I did first here is I just placed down a little bit of scenic glue. It's pretty thick stuff. And then I'm placing these, they're kind of like dirt clods. What they are is they're the clods that form in the sanded grout just because of ambient, moisture in the air. So once I've placed those on there, I'll come back now and grab a little bit of sanded grout, and I'm going to sprinkle that sanded grout over it. And what I want here is to get it on top of the glue, certainly, but I also want that sanded grout to fill in around the bottom of these dirt clods, because I want them to look like, they're forced up there because the road was graded. What you saw, I'm going to pause it real quick. What you saw me spraying there before was just denatured alcohol. And what that does is, and if you remember, we've talked about this a lot before, denatured alcohol will break the surface tension of your powder, the powder of the sanded grout. If you just put a liquid on there, because of the surface tension, it'll just ball up and it won't soak in. If you put either soap water works as well, but just denatured alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, both of them work fine. Spray it on there, breaks the surface tension, and then that glue soaks right in to that dirt that you're sprinkling over it. Then what I do is, add a little bit more here. And then I want to kind of clean off the clods themselves. I don't want the dirt clods to get lost in all the dirt that I'm putting on. And so I'll just come back with my paintbrush with a little bit of water and glue, and then kind of wash them off, and that makes them a little bit more apparent, instead of just a lump underneath this dirt that I've put on there. It looks like a big dirt clod that was thrown up by a grader, coming off the grader as the grader was going on the road. And then this was something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. It's not an easy effect to pull off so it looks correct, and I thought I nailed it. I just thought I did a great job. So, little pat myself on the back there. Sorry, but I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So I'm going to get rid of that video and I'm going to get back to our slides and talk about what happens. So after that process, this is the surface that you're going to be left with. Now, it's not going to be painted. This is after that surface gets painted, but that surface, after I've put that Mod Podge over the rock, after I've drizzled a little bit of the sanded grout over there, and then it's dried, then I'll go back and I'll paint it with burnt umber and black. That's my base coating for pretty much everything these days. I used to use black, but I just like the brown. A little bit of a brown accent is so much better. So after I do that, I'm going to go back over here. I use my first color that I talked to you about, the yellow ochre, and then I just, over that brown, I am just doing a dry brush, and you can see it there. There's not a lot of definition there. It's just two colors. It's the brown below it on the rocks on the bottom, and the yellow ochre on top. That's it. So then the next thing is I need to define those. Now you look at the top here and you can see how they're much better defined. And so what I did there was I did nothing to the ground except I took a wash of the rust color, the light rust, and I did that on the ground, not on the rocks themselves, but just the ground. And then I took a little bit of the, oops, I need to go back. I took a little bit of the uh, uh, deck tan. I was trying to think of my third color. And then I did highlights on those rocks. And that's how you make those. I made these rocks stand out. So I've got the base underneath them, the ground level, and then the rocks. And they definitely look like they stand out now. And that's, of course, what I was really trying to accomplish, is making those rocks stand out. Okay, now the next thing, I'm going to take some questions here real quick, but the next thing I'm going to talk about is this shelf underneath the rock in front of it. And we've looked at pictures of it, but I just want to go back and talk about that, because this is something I've been trying to do for a long time. So John says, a wood carver long ago told me, don't look at pictures of nature, instead of take real pics that will give you the better idea of colors. I don't know if that's because of the doctored images in books. What I find is when I take a picture of one of my dioramas, I'll set up my little studio thing. And if I take a quick shutter speed, just like a real quick picture, then I'll get this amount of color, not light, contrast, but color. But if I take that exposure and I do like one of these really super long exposures with like a really high f-stop, like 22 or 24 or something like that, then what happens is it allows all that color to be picked up by the camera. And so a lot of the pictures that I publish where I have my diorama with a black background, that's what I've done. I've got this black background and I do a super long exposure with a really small aperture so I can get all this depth, so everything is basically in focus. It's like a pinhole. But because it's such a long exposure, it allows all that color in. And man, I got to tell you, the colors are so vibrant. Even in some of these, it's mostly desert or whatever, one of my dioramas, you see every color. And so it really enhances. So I've noticed that myself, John, about taking, those long exposures and stuff like that. For me, it has to be done on a tripod. I can't hold it that long because I'm doing like 30-second exposures sometimes. Nuts. But it really comes out beautiful and it really gives you a lot of color out of the picture. So yeah, really, really cool. Okay, and then John says, wood carver. When you look at a scene, images of the sunlight hitting on the ground and objects, would you go by applying lights and dark to the scenery? Should you have movable light source? Yeah, so I have very distinct ways that I want to put my light in a room, right? Because you've seen my dioramas before, John, where I have like a room. And so you can kind of control the light, where it's coming from and how it's shining on stuff. I definitely have to have a very specific way of putting that light in there to get the effect I want. And that's so different than something like on the surface, because like on the surface, just like you're saying, if I go in this room and it's low light, I go in this room and it's like a hall where they're showing models or something like that. It's a completely different experience on your lighting on what you're trying to present. So that's part of why I like to have little rooms in my dioramas. I can control that a heck of a lot better. I can control the light, even if it's in a bright area, because it's a little room inside, like an underground room or something like that. I can almost block out that light except for the front and then have my own lighting techniques set up in there and works great. I don't know if that completely answered your question, but I hope so, because I do have different ways of doing that kind of lighting. I love lighting my stuff very low because when I design a diorama, it's typically the scene is happening at night for some reason. I guess because I can light it that way. That's part of it. But I always envision these stories that I tell and the stories that I try to impart in my dioramas. For some reason, they're always at night, early in the morning, that kind of thing. So kind of helps maybe just the way I do stuff. Okay, so thank you very much. I want to talk about this overhang. So the overhang is right here. There's what it looked like before, and this is a very common thing. And then I started with the overhang, trying to build the overhang up with a little bit of pink foam. Now, this is just a very thin piece of pink foam. It's just like that thin. This is what I cut it from, and I just cut this up there or put it up there and traced, and it's supposed to follow the terrain above where the rock is, to the left of where the rock is. Well, below where the rock is, it's had some cutaway, and so it's maybe like water has built up on that rock for so many years, and it washes away below it. And so that's what I'm trying to create here is this cutaway bank. So I first put that on there, glued it on there. I put some pins on there, let it secure. Once it was on there, I did carve it back. It did not stay that wide. I did carve this thing back. I rounded it a little bit. It's all on video. And then I went in, I painted it black. Well, the burnt umber black, and then put some of the sanded grout on it. And again, what I'm trying to achieve here, and we've all seen this, where you've got this bank, you've got just a dirt bank, and it's just too steep to maintain itself. And so it's slowly sloughing away, but the surface isn't, because the surface is held together by the root systems of the plants that are above it. And so it kind of holds there. Well, that's what I'm trying to create. And this is something that I really, really have tried to create before. Um, and I think I've just done it better here than in the past. So once that stuff is in there and dried, then I can start adding more to it. And so that's in the form of these grasses. Now these grasses, I had some real nice pictures. I'm not going to show them here because they're just on another drive. But um, these grasses are what are going to lend to the fact that there's something holding that there, and then it's falling away. These grasses have been put in just by, you grab a little clump and then you press it in there. I think I showed last week how to do that. You press it in there. I know I showed on our coaching. I get confused now because there's so much coaching going on. But you just press them in there and you let them set up. And then I had to do like 3 different levels of that. So I put in a clump, let that kind of set up for 10, 15 minutes, and I'd move to somewhere else on that little ledge that I created. And then I put another clump in. And then I come back to that first clump and put some in front of it. I needed this depth. You just putting one clump in there is just not going to do it. I used different colors of the static grass, different lengths. After it was in, then I trimmed it with my little hair trimmer. It's like a beard trimmer, but it works brilliantly on the grasses. And so I can trim all those down to exactly the way I want, and then I can paint it. I haven't even painted that yet, so I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. Once it gets painted, it have a little bit more contrast, so you can see the depth that's supposed to be in there. But I was just really happy with how that's starting to make this little rock cut road. That's what this is called. Starting to look. So that is kind of my Western terrain. It's coming along. It's not done. It is part of my coaching class. And we're continuing with foliage. We're continuing with, just getting this thing just exactly right. The last part, and I'll probably do the top down on this and make it a little easier to see, is the last part is going to be the actual road. So now the road is painted, of course, you can see that, and that mottled color is something I wanted. But just like here where I've got this new sanded grout, I need to do that here too, because we've got some rutting that has to happen. We've got to show some tracks of the cart that's going in there. And I've got a special way to go ahead and mount a cart to this so it's super stable. And so we're going to be looking at that next time. I had to get some water there. Excuse me. Okay, and then John says, excuse me, I'm sorry. I think the Star Wars model that had a ship that moves was from UK was insane. Ship that moves was from the UK was insane. I didn't see that one, John, but I'll have to take a look at it. Bob says, excuse me. The wind makes a shelf like that. It will rain here approximately 10 inches a year. Unfortunately, it does not the same for the daytime. It will pool and wash out these ridges along the base of the rocks. Isn't that great? And we had these, growing up here, and I used to love to play in those. I was talking to Bob yesterday on our call. That's where we used to set up our army men and shoot them with BB guns and stuff like that. And it was just a lot of fun, just plinking. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on those little washouts and those little fallaways and those banks, and to create something like that out of your memory, because that's the other thing. I'm trying to create these things out of my memory. I don't. I've said this before. I prefer to look at a reference picture, get it in my head, and then create it from memory and the vision that I create in my head, instead of constantly looking at the picture. There's pluses and minuses with both, methods. That's just the way that I like to do it, because when I'm doing it out of my head, I can pull things back from childhood, from the military, from just hiking, whatever the case may be. I can pull that in, and I'm not really as focused on, boy, I've got to make it exactly like that image that I'm trying to recreate. And that's one of the reasons I don't necessarily recreate images. I'll recreate the technique. I'll recreate, what the rock looks like, something like that. But I want a unique image when I build a diorama. So I think building out of your mind, that maybe doesn't sound great, but building it from what's in here really helps me do that. I think that for me at least, it feels like I'm building to tell you my story and not to tell you somebody else's story. And that's just the way I see it. And I like building that way. So I would love to say thank you to my patrons who have been so well and so nice for hanging on while I did transitions earlier this year and all kinds of things. I'm back to posting more. These images, these videos, the coaching and stuff, that's all on its way there too. The coaching that I do is an awful lot of fun for me. And my student Bob is on, and he said he's really enjoying it too. Um, but it's also something that I want to expand, and I want to get more ideas from folks about what they want. So I'm really looking to my members. I'm trying to get back to that picture. Sorry. I'm really looking to my members, both my YouTube members and my Patreon members, and anybody that wants to comment. What kind of classes do you want to see? Because I'm going to be putting on a challenge. And what challenges are is we have a set number of time, we have a set number of days, and then you come in and we build something together. I lead it, I guide it. You can have your own input certainly, but we do it together. And hopefully I'm teaching you something. I learn every time, but I'm hoping I'm also imparting information. So it's different than this. It's not just me talking and you following and maybe typing in a question. You're live, you're in the event, and you can converse and ask very specific questions. And then I can demo it. So it's just like the kind of personalized training and coaching that I do for Bob, but this will be in a group setting and it'll be on a specific subject. When Bob and I are working, heck, Bob can say, you know what, I'd like to do this. And then we dive into it. And I got to tell you, that's one of the things I was saying earlier. That makes it extremely fun because it's like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Let's do that. And we've done that a couple of times during our classes and our mentoring, and it's really fun. It's very spontaneous. And I think the results have been fantastic too. So if you're interested in like that kind of thing, please tell me the kind of coaching, the kind of classes, the kind of challenges that you'd like to see. And think about it like this. A challenge is like 2 or 3 hours. What can we do in 2 or 3 hours? If we took that 2 or 3 hours and we put it over 2 days, what could we do in that amount of time? So that's what I'm looking about doing. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. I have actually been in a couple of those. One was on writing and one was on, how helping your channel and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, it's really enjoyable. I got a lot of information out of it that because it was so focused, I was able to apply that information right away. And that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to necessarily just have a little class and, hey, that was fun. I want it to be something you want to build, that you're interested in building, and you're going to build it online with me, and I'll help you. So throw those ideas this way, please. I'd love to see them. I am working on one, so don't worry. It's not going to happen if I don't get any suggestions. But I just wanted to get kind of your input. Okay. So thank you again, and I really appreciate it. And I should probably not just leave that stuff there. I should probably talk to you direct. But thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful time today. I did, and I love these live streams. If there's anything you want to change, if there's anything you'd like to see, if you don't like these live streams, whatever the case may be, give me some feedback. Tell me what you think. I'd love to get it to a point where you really look forward to this, and these bring a lot of value, and that's really the key. Am I bringing value to your modeling and your diorama building? That's what I'm here to do. So if that's it, thank you so much for coming in, everybody. Gosh, and so many great comments today. I really, really appreciate that. But I'm going to cut out of here. I'm going to go check on some kittens, see how they're doing. And then we'll probably have some more pictures of that too later on. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks everybody for coming in, and I hope you get on onto the bench and get a chance to do some modeling this weekend. We'll see ya. Bye bye.